All right, well, it's 3 o'clock, so hello. My name is Duncan Clausen. I'm the Snohomish County Elections and Voter Outreach Specialist. I'm going to get our slideshow going here, but I just want to thank you all for joining us today for Your Vote Matters, Getting Prepared in 2020. We have a couple of guests here today that'll be presenting some good information about elections and resources to help you navigate this exciting election we have this year, the presidential. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here just a moment. Okay, so like I said, my name is Duncan Clausen. Joining us today also as host is Wendy Mouch. She's the Snohomish County Elections Supervisor. We're going to be keeping track of things on the back end. So on your screen, you should have the option for the Q&A, and so please feel free to type your questions in there. We have disabled audio and video for participants just to keep this webinar streamlined. We will be recording this as well today, or are recording this today, so that we can share this out on YouTube and other channels to make sure that folks can also gain the good information we'll be presenting today. So in addition to Wendy and myself as your host, we have 3 speakers. Garth Fell, the Snohomish County Auditor, will be carrying the bulk of today's presentation, talking about elections and voting here in Snohomish County. We also have Susan Hempstead joining us from Sno-Isle Libraries. She's the Assistant Director of Strategic Relations. And last but not least, we have Jody Troutwine joining us from the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County, and she is the chair of the Voter Services Committee there. So again, the webinar is being recorded, and all participants are muted and video is disabled. And we just ask that you use the Q&A feature to ask questions. And Wendy and myself will help to navigate those. Feel free to ask the questions at any point in time, although we're going to reserve the space at the end of the presentation today to get to answering those.
All right, and so I think this is where I jump in, right, Duncan?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so first of all, I want to thank you all for spending a few moments with us today, and happy National Voter Registration Day. This is the big day when we make a push to get people registered and ready for the upcoming election. So I appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us. Again, as Duncan mentioned, the purpose of this webinar really is to encourage you as a participant in the elections process to get engaged and to help you get prepared for this year's important election. Why? Why? Really because your vote truly does matter. And so, you know, I think we've seen as we've lived through the global pandemic that we're dealing with right now, and certainly with other issues that we're seeing in our country around social justice issues, that just really the importance of federal, state, and local government and the impact that those entities can have in our life. And it just really highlights, I think, the importance of the upcoming elections here in November. And history really has shown us that elections can be close and every vote really truly does matter. So it's important that your voice be heard this election. And so I appreciate you joining us. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk through the steps that you can go through to make sure that you're a confident participant in the election process this year. But first, I'd like to introduce a couple of our valuable community partners in this webinar and in the work of engaging our community in the elections process here in Snohomish County. And so our first partner I would like to recognize and introduce is Sno-Isle Libraries. And so we have Susan Hempstead here. Susan's the Assistant Director at Sno-Isle's, in charge of strategic planning and strategic relations. Maybe I just gave you a boost there with the planning part, but strategic relations. And so I'm going to turn it over to Susan just to share a little bit briefly about Sno-Isle and their perspective, I think, on this upcoming election and where they may be able to add some value.
Thank you, Garth and Duncan, and I'm so happy to be here with Jody and the League of Women Voters as well. Happy National Voter Registration Day. Today I'm representing our Executive Director, Lois Langer-Thompson. Unfortunately, Lois's mom passed away and she's with her family in Minnesota. Our hearts are heavy for her and we're holding her top of mind this week. Sno-Isle Libraries has 23 public libraries in Snohomish and Island counties, and traditionally on National Voter Registration Day, our public library staff would welcome you in person at your favorite library with volunteers from the League of Women Voters and county auditor staff to provide resources and information on how to vote. However, in a short amount of time, we've all become very entrepreneurial while we follow the recommendations of our local public health districts to comply with social distancing guidelines. How am I going to work from home? How am I going to access health care? How do I look for a job? How do I help and support my children's remote learning? Where can I access Wi-Fi? And how do I register to vote? Your community library can help. The library is an access point for you to begin your civic journey. Library staff can help you build your civic life by helping you register to vote, provide you with information about completing the census, and signing you up for a library card. We also will have extra voters guides on hand to share with you, and you can access a ballot drop box at 10 public libraries in Snohomish County. In addition, your library can also provide you with curbside and online library services, free Wi-Fi, and we're partnering with Snohomish and Island counties to offer you free face coverings. My son Nate turned 18 3 weeks ago, and he accessed votewa.gov on his phone to register to vote. I'm not sure he entirely knows what this means to him yet, but I can't wait for him to discover how his vote can make a difference in the choices our community collectively makes on a range of subjects, from transportation to education, from parks to libraries, and choosing our elected representatives. So thank you so much to you and to our Snohomish County Auditor, Garth and his team, Wendy and Duncan, the League of Women Voters. I'd also like to give a shout out to Leadership Launch and Homage Senior Services who are also highlighting Voter Registration Day today. This is how we can all make a difference. Your vote is your voice. So thank you so much, and come see us at the library.
Thank you, Susan, for sharing. You have really been a valuable partner with Snohomish County, and we just really appreciate all that the libraries have done to pivot during this difficult time and continue to be a great resource for our community. So the second partner I'd like to introduce today is the League of Women Voters, and we have Jody Troutwine with us today to talk about the League and some information they have that'll be helpful this elections process, this elections year. So, Jody.
Well, again, happy National Voter Registration Day. You know, most years we would have been sitting in the Sno-Isle Libraries to register people. And so I'm kind of missing seeing everybody when we're doing this. But it is such a great partnership between us and elections and the libraries, because we're all interested in nonpartisan ways to educate voters to carry out civic responsibilities. So we've been partners for a number of years, and this just is our next step in how we do that. On the slide, you're going to see a couple of things that are specific to League of Women Voters that we like to share with you. Typically, we do candidate forums in places that you can come and you can hear them, often with our partners at Edmonds Community College, but also on the county campus and especially at Sultan High School. But this year we're not doing in-person forums. And so we are doing quite a few forums that are going to be on YouTube and on KSER radio. So your best source to find out about those is to go to our League's website right here on the forums part. And just to give you a taste of what you can find there, there is going to be a forum with the 3 U.S. congressional districts, 1, 2, and 7, all together, all those people together. It's dynamite. It's just fascinating to hear that. And then Washington legislature, we already have the 39th out on YouTube, and you can link to it from this page. And we will be having the 21st, the 32nd, and the 44th. So we're doing a lot here in Snohomish County. On that same page, you can also see links to statewide forums that the state League of Women Voters is sponsoring. And so you will be able to see the Governor's Forum and others like that. So there's a lot on that page. I would encourage you to go back regularly. They're not out there yet, all of them, but keep checking that. The other thing is Vote 411, which is something actually the League has had going for a number of years. And having moved here from Missouri about 10 years ago, I'm just enamored of the state voter pamphlet. I love that. But Vote 411 goes a step further because it asks candidates to respond to questions. And I checked it just to check. My mom lives in Indiana. I put in her address and found out, yes, it's very well done nationwide. So anyway, you go to Vote 411, you put in your address, it brings up the people that will be on your ballot. So then you can see who those are and what they answer to the questions, or if they perhaps don't give an answer, that tells you something too. So anyway, I really invite you to check out what we have on these two locations. And again, it's great to work with these two groups of people, the elections people and the libraries. Thanks.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you to the League and all of your members and the continued support they provide for elections and really helping people engage in our community and in democracy here in Snohomish County. So we are got one other partner I just want to highlight. We don't have anybody from the Everett Public Libraries to speak today, but they have been a great partner in this event as well. Again, much like Sno-Isle, really connecting people in the community to information and services and adjusting during these difficult times to be a great partner in reaching the community. So Everett Public Libraries provided some great support for this event as well. All right, so with that, we're going to use the rest of our time going through what I hope will be some helpful steps and information that will, again, give you confidence in voting in the upcoming election. So I think maybe the first thing that you might find interesting is that this year, we anticipate that 90% of voters will turn out in the presidential election. That would be a historic turnout, but we are seeing signs that there's a lot of engagement and interest in the election. And so we're hopeful that we can get to a 90% turnout. And so with that, it's also important to know that that doesn't mean that everybody that's eligible to participate in this election will be registered and ready. And so right now we have about 75% of eligible residents registered to vote. And so when you break that down to participation based on registration and who's potentially eligible, we really will only have 68% of eligible Snohomish County residents voting this year. So there's still a big opportunity to get more people engaged in the process. If you look at that in just sheer numbers, that's over 200,000 people that could be registered and could be voting if we can get them engaged. So I appreciate the work that the League does and Sno-Isle is doing. And I would encourage all of you as participants in this process to continue to encourage your neighbors and your family members to get registered if they're not, or to do the next step and actually vote when it comes to this presidential election. So as we identified there still is a lot of opportunity. And so really the first step in the process in being engaged in this election is to make sure that you're registered to vote. And so to register to vote in Washington State, you really have some very minimal qualifications. You must be a citizen of the United States, a legal resident of Washington State, and at least 18 years old by election day. And then in addition to that, you just have to make sure that you haven't been disqualified for some reason. And so most people can register pretty quickly and pretty easily in the process. If you are registered already, it is important to keep your information up to date, particularly in our voting system that we'll talk about here shortly. So if you've moved or if you've changed your name, make sure that you go out and get that information updated for your registration so that we're ready to get you a ballot in the mail here. So we do have some deadlines for voter registration that are coming up that you should be aware of. You can register online or through the mail right now and through Monday, October 26th. And you do that by going out to votewa.gov. And that website will also allow you to update some information, your registration information as well. So it's a great resource for not only the registration process, but once we get into the election as well, there's some other tools. We'll point out and highlight a couple of those as we go through this presentation. If for some reason you can't get out there and register before October 26th, there still isn't an opportunity to register October 26th through 8 o'clock election night. We are a same day election and registration state, so you can register to vote all the way up until 8 p.m. election night and get a ballot and participate in this upcoming election. So don't let the registration process be a barrier for yourself or for anybody that you know. If you know of anybody, again, we just really want to encourage people to get registered and make sure that they're maintaining their registration information. You can visit our website to get some more information about the locations that and hours where you can register to vote as we get closer to the election. But again, I think early action will always be easiest for you, and make sure that you're ready to participate in the process. So once you're registered, before we get into kind of the next steps and giving you more confidence in participating in this election, I think it's important to share and make sure that everybody's well aware that Snohomish County, as do all counties in Washington State, we vote by mail. So you will get a ballot in the mail. Every voter receives a ballot in the mail prior to each election. There are no polling places. So there's been a lot of conversation in the national dialogue about vote by mail. And I think it's important to understand that this is not a new process for Snohomish County or for the state of Washington. Snohomish County, in fact, we've been voting by mail and had all vote by mail elections since 2006. So this is 15 years of experience and process that we have in place to support a well-run, secure, accurate election. We've got time-tested laws, policies, and procedures that will really make sure that the election is well executed for voters and that you can trust the results in this process. We do have here on this slide some indication of the mailing dates. So we are getting a number of questions right now as we get into the elections process of when will ballots be arriving. And that's exciting to hear people are anxious and ready to vote. So military and out of country ballots went out last Friday and Saturday to voters. So those ballots are on their way, and we're already getting a few of those back from folks as well, even this early in the week. So so ballots are out for those individuals. In October, on the 9th, we will be mailing ballots out to out-of-state voters and to voters in some of our rural areas of the county, rural postal routes. That mailing date is set really just to give that additional time to make sure that those ballots can get into voters' hands and that they have plenty of time to get those voted and returned. And then all other voters here in the county will get their ballots mailed out on October 15th. You should anticipate that you get your ballot within a week of that mailing date. So if you haven't received your ballot by Wednesday, October 21st, I believe that's the date, you should go ahead and contact our office. We do find, and just so folks are aware, we do track the mailing process, and we find that ballots are typically delivered within 3 to 5 days. So the process is pretty smooth and for the most part pretty quick for people. So again, I think the important takeaway here really is that Snohomish County and Washington State in general have a long history of vote by mail, and we've got processes in place. So despite what we hear about adjustments happening in the rest of the nation, I think you can have confidence in the process we have set up for our elections process and for voters really in this state. All right, so we talked about getting registered. The second process, as you're waiting for your ballots to arrive, or the second recommendation really from us, is that you study the candidates and the issues, and there are a number of ways to do that. Certainly, we will be mailing a voter's guide in conjunction with the Secretary of State's office, and that'll be coming out in early October. those pamphlets go out to every residential address in the state. So it's an opportunity for people to read about the candidates, read about the local ballot measures. The Snohomish County local measures will be on the inside of that pamphlet, towards the middle to the end of that pamphlet. So you only get one voter's pamphlet this election. There are some elections where you'll get a state and then a separate local pamphlet, but for the 2020 presidential election, it's one pamphlet with all the federal, state, and local candidates in it. As Jody mentioned, the league has a number of great resources as well, where you can learn about candidates and the issues that are on the ballot. And one of those resources is the Vote 411 website. And again, they're featuring questions that are a little bit different and responses that are a little bit different from than what you would find in the voters pamphlet. And then the candidate forums, Jody also mentioned that they are conducting those in a different format this election, but still having a question and answer and dialogue and debate between candidates. So I think those are some really valuable resources that you have at your fingertips. The other thing that I would encourage is certainly go out to other trusted sources that can provide additional information about the upcoming election and candidates. Certainly you can study the candidates' individual pages themselves and see what they're saying about themselves. But you know, take the time and do a little bit of studying. How much studying do you need to do? Well, that's an individual choice, and certainly one that I think everybody can make for themselves. The most important thing is do enough studying so you feel like you understand the candidates and the issues, and make sure you vote. Your voice is valuable. You know, I don't know that we can have perfect information about every candidate and every issue, so don't let that be a barrier to voting. But certainly we would encourage you to utilize the resources that are at your fingertips to study the candidates and the issues on your ballot. I will point out real quick before we jump into anything else that for candidates in this election, all of our races are such that you can vote for one candidate on the ballot in each race. The presidential race, you'll have a kind of a pair of candidates that you can pick. The president and the vice president appear as a pair on the ballot. So, and then for your local bonds and levies and your advisory measures and other statewide measures, you will see those on with different response positions, usually a yes, no, or accept, reject. And so plenty of opportunity in looking at candidates and ballot measures this election. The next step in the process and something that we really want to highlight is that you follow the instructions and you vote and sign your ballot envelope. So we do have a video on our website called How to Vote by Mail, and it's a quick 1.5 minute video that kind of shows you the process of receiving your mail ballot packet there and how to mark the ballot in a way that the equipment will read it properly and that you'll communicate back to our office exactly what your intent is in terms of your candidates. So I would encourage you, just to take a few moments. You know, a number of us do vote each election, and so we can get into the routine of getting our ballot packet at home and just opening that up and jumping right to the ballot. I would encourage you to slow down just for a minute and read the instructions. While we try not to change things significantly election to election, occasionally there are some adjustments that we make, and so it's important to just read those through and make sure you're well versed in how to properly mark your ballot in a way that it sends a clear message who you're choosing. So you'll see instructions not just on the ballot itself, but you can see there's some instructions right there on the ballot envelope that you get, as well as a number of inserts that come with the ballot as well. And so just take a few moments, read carefully through those instructions, and then follow them. And the keys there are in our system. It's with our ballot. It's a fill in the bubble system, and so you just want to make sure that you're filling in the bubble of the candidate that you want or the response to the ballot measure that you desire. And if you make a mistake, there is a process for correcting that. You can put a line through the candidate that you no longer want and select another candidate. And that's the clear indication that you've made a voter correction. And then as you're returning your ballot, you want to make sure that you just assemble it in a way that the ballot is on the inside of the return envelope. And then on the outside of the return envelope, you want to make sure that you sign the envelope. Every ballot envelope that we get back, we check the signature on that envelope and compare it to the signature that we have on file in the voter registration system. And so we can't count and process your ballot until we've made that confirmation that you were the one that signed your ballot envelope. So it's a very important step that you take. And with that, just be assured that if for some reason you forget to sign that ballot envelope, we will go through and send you a letter giving you an opportunity to respond. If you don't respond to our letter, we will call you as well and remind you that you have an opportunity to resolve that issue and get your ballot counted. If your signature doesn't match the one we have on file, we'll be reaching out as well to provide an opportunity for you to resolve that issue. So we want to take every effort to make sure that your vote counts. And in terms of your role in that process, I think the key is making sure that you start by signing your envelope and making sure that you get that back on time. So with that, really the next step is that return process. And so we do encourage you to return your ballot. And for this election, and really in all elections, we really would suggest that you return it as early as you are comfortable. So you can vote and return your ballot the day you get it. There's no need to wait. You don't have to wait until election day. There's no rule that says we're going to hold that until election day before we start processing it. So really, the sooner you can get it back, the sooner we can start the processing. And for instance, if you forget to sign the envelope, if we have that back in the first few days after ballots have been mailed out, we can go ahead and get notice out to you, and you have more time to resolve those issues before our election results are final. So there really is a benefit to the voter to return in your ballot early if that's something you're comfortable with, if you've made up your mind. So again, no need to wait until election day to vote. I would say that as you're going through the election period, if you are waiting for a bit to make up your mind on some things, you must make sure that you do get your ballots back on time. And it's critical. We are here in Washington State, a state that looks at the postmark on ballots that are mailed. So if you are going to use a blue postal box to return your ballot through the post office, which is perfectly fine, you just want to make sure that ballot gets postmarked by election day. And you do that by checking the last pickup time on the box and making sure that your ballot is back in that box on time before their last pickup time. It's not a safe assumption to believe that every box is picked up at 5 o'clock each day. Some boxes are picked up as early as 11 o'clock in the morning and emptied from the post office. So really, you do need to make sure that you're checking that. And we would encourage you to return it certainly well before election day if possible. I think the post office itself makes a recommendation for across the nation that people return their ballots a week before the election. I think that's particularly suggested based on states where your ballot has to be in to the county by election day. We are, again, a postmark state, so really making sure that you check that postal box is important. If you don't want to use a postal box and want a method to get it directly back to us in the county's hands for counting, you can use one of the 30 ballot drop boxes we have around the county. There's a picture of it here on the left-hand side of your screen. They're conveniently located in each city and town and in many of our rural areas where there's a post office as well. And so that is another method. We will be picking up ballots from those boxes on a regular basis, so we don't wait until election day to retrieve ballots from those boxes. As soon as ballots go out, starting the week following, we are out on a regular basis, emptying those boxes and bringing ballots back for processing. Ballots do have to be in the county ballot drop boxes by 8 p.m. on election night. And we will have staff out there closing those boxes to make sure that that cutoff and deadline time is adhered to. But again, I would encourage early action. Early action is, I think, particularly important this year with COVID. We are doing whatever we can to make sure that we're minimizing gathering crowds and lines. And so while I think there's very low risk dropping a ballot off in a drop box, because typically you're doing it either walking up and just at that box for a short period of time, or it's a drive-up box situation. Even though there's a low risk, we do really want to make sure that we're minimizing the risk even further. So the earlier you can get that done, and the more we can minimize gatherings and lines of people, the better. So again, I'd encourage you to get your ballot back as soon as possible. The other benefit to doing that, it certainly is that when we count ballots election night, you'll know that your votes are part of those results. That's not to say that if they get back on election night, we stop counting ballots. No, we do continue to count ballots. Every ballot that comes in that is on time gets counted. But it is exciting to know that your votes are part of the election night results that are released if they're back early. So, all right. So once your ballot's in, you don't have to trust that it got to our office. You can actually go and check that. You can do that through the VoteWa application that we talked about in terms of registering to vote. There is a tool within that votewa.gov application that allows you to track and see your ballot status. So when you click on that ballot status, it'll give you one of potentially 4 tracking statuses. It'll tell you when your ballot's been sent. It'll tell you if your ballot has been received by our office. So that's just saying that we got it back. We may not have checked the signature on it yet, but we've got it back in our system. Once we've checked the signature and deemed that it's accepted for counting, the status will either move to accepted. And if for some reason there is a concern about the signature that you provided on your envelope, say that the signature was missing or that it doesn't match what we have on file, you will get another status. Right now that's rejected is what the status says. Again, there's a process for curing that. And that status actually may be updated in the coming days to a different word rather than rejected, to make sure that it really does reflect that you have a opportunity to cure that before the end of the election process. So we'd encourage you to use that tracking tool to at least confirm that your ballot's back in place. Now, it is important to know that this does not confirm how your votes were counted, and that's in order to maintain privacy. We don't even know how those individual votes, we can't link your votes back to you as an individual. So there is a limitation to the tool in terms of it tells us that it tells us and you that you have your ballots back and in our hands, and it's been accepted, the signature has been checked. But after the signature checking process, then all those ballots that have gotten past that step really become anonymous in the process, so that you have a secret ballot, and it's a hallmark of our system. I did want to point out that there are a couple other options here available to folks, and so there are a number of people in our community that could benefit from using an accessible voting machine to make sure that they can cast an independent, private, and secure ballot. So if you or somebody you know has dexterity concerns with voting a ballot in paper form, or maybe they could use and benefit from a ballot that's on the screen that has higher contrast between text and the background, or larger text that they can view. We do have a number of accessible voting sites that will be open prior to and on election day. So Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. Those sites will be here at a county campus here in Everett, at the Alderwood Water and Wastewater District down in Linwood, and then at the Wyndham Gardens Hotel in Smoky Point. And so that equipment is there that where people can mark a ballot on the screen. I will say that it does just print out a ballot that is then processed like all the other mail ballots. So it is not, it's not an online voting method. It's not an in-person voting method, but it is a way of marking a ballot that provides some additional tools for those voters that could benefit from that. These sites that we have open on Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday will also be able to provide last minute assistance. We talked about being able to register to vote up until election day or make adjustments to your registration. You can do that at any one of these sites as well. If you run into an issue or any concern, we again, these sites are going to be available to assist you. I would suggest that any issues or concerns that you run into, that the first place you should check is our website and potentially calling our offices. Those are going to be ways that we can maybe help you immediately. And then certainly if you need to take advantage of some in-person options, these sites are available for that as well. So with that, I think we're gonna spend the next 20 minutes or so here looking to see if there's any questions in the chat box and seeing if we can answer some additional questions for y'all. So Duncan, what do you see?
Yeah, so I'm turning my video back on, and we've had a couple of questions already. There were some answered in the Q&A chat box. So if folks have not been able to see that, I'll just run through those really quick. One question was if the slide deck will be made available. Wendy answered that, said we'll make the recording available and post that to our webpage. If there's specific interest in the slide deck itself, I think we can probably email that out to participants as well. Somebody else was curious how many folks were connected to the webinar today. So we have 39 attendees. I think that number may have grown or shifted over the course, but pretty good attendance. In terms of question about how easy is it to register and what documents do people need to have? So Wendy again took care of that, said it's very easy to register. We don't need any documentation, but the registrant will need to know either their Washington ID or driver's license number and the issue date if they're registering online, or the last 4 digits of their social security number. And then there was another question about how we can track our ballots and confirm they were counted. So I think we covered that one. I think that question came in before we got to that slide there. So if there's any additional questions there on that question, let us know. We'll get that answered for you. So first up here, I would love to know how to help register other voters through the League of Women Voters or volunteer to support election workers. So Garth, I'll let you touch on that, or maybe Jody from the League, you have an answer as well.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, state law certainly allows for you to assist and encourage people to register to vote. The more people that are participating in our elections process, certainly the better. It means that our results better reflect our community and what our community is looking for, either in leadership or in the different positions and issues that we're voting on. And so it's certainly legal and encouraged to help others register to vote. There are a number of organizations, as you point out, that do this work ongoing throughout the year. And so, Jody, do you want to tell us a little bit about the League and your efforts on voter registration engagement?
A little bit, yes. So on your website and the things that we're using now with COVID, you know, we used to have drives where we would sit someplace and register people, and that's not necessarily a really good idea, but there are many, many options for online. It's very simple to do that. So earlier in the webinar, we had the wa.gov, votewa.gov. That's a good thing. If you happen to be going to our League site, we have some QR codes that you can use your phone to scan and register as well. through the league website under voter service. That's my area. It's an outreach project we have. So it takes a little digging around, but it is there on our website. And, you know, just explaining to people if they happen to have the form with them, that can be a helpful thing as well. So looking through it with them is good.
And is the league always looking for more members and people to join?
Absolutely. And I should also say that there are women and men. So, you know, men can be a part. We have some very active men. So we would love to have you.
Excellent. Excellent. And Susan, I know Sno-Isle has some resources on their on your website as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And if you happen to be coming by to pick some hold items up or for curbside pickup, you can certainly ask library staff for a paper registration form if you're not able to find any of the links or access them online. You can also come to the library and access the Wi-Fi if you'd like to register to vote and you don't have access to Wi-Fi. All of our libraries have Wi-Fi enabled. So if you're in the parking lot or walking by, you should be able to access Wi-Fi. But absolutely.
Great. That's awesome.
Excellent. So Garth, does the county start counting ballots before Election Day, or are there state rules against that?
That's a good question. So based on the equipment that we have currently, we can count ballots, or we can do what we call scanning or processing ballots as soon as they're returned. So what we are limited to is just the kind of scanning portion, which creates images of those ballots. We cannot actually tabulate the results until 8 o'clock on election night. And depending on what system you have, there are some limits on how soon you can process. But in Snohomish County, again, we can scan ballots as they're returned. And so there really is a benefit to getting those ballots back early from a processing standpoint. And I think there is a question a little bit later on here about the processing of ballots that if we get those back early, it really does mean on election day we have larger election results. If our results and how those roll out really are dependent on when ballots come back. And so it does take a little bit of time, but state law does allow us to do processing or imaging of the ballots prior to 8 p.m. And then at 8 p.m. we can push the button to tabulate, and that takes a few minutes to generate the results, to go back through and pull all that information to get us results that we can post to the public.
Excellent. Thank you, Garth. I have a prompt here from someone who I'm guessing knows what we're up to, but what is the Super Voter program?
That's a great question. And I don't know, Duncan, if on the slides you can go back a little bit, we have some icons that maybe people noticed were appearing up in the corner of some of our pages here. So this year, we've engaged in an outreach campaign, which we've called Super Voter. And really, it just identifies a number of steps that you can go through as a voter to make sure that you can be confident, again, that your ballot's going to count and your votes will be registered. And so it's an ad campaign. We've got some ads on buses. Duncan and his team have done a great job of creating these badges, which you can download and share on social media. We would love to get more people sharing that message in terms of making sure people are registered, studying the issues through the local voters pamphlet and other resources, making sure you vote and sign your ballot and return your ballot early, and then tracking your ballot through the VoteWall system. So it's we've had some good feedback so far, but again, would love to have more people engaged in the Super Voter campaign. And I think all of that continued dialogue will make sure that we can get towards that 90% turnout that I think we can hit this election.
Excellent. Thank you, Garth. I think we might have touched on this a little bit, but specifically, how soon after the ballots are received at the county office will you begin opening and verifying signatures? So on 11/3, you can start the tabulating machines.
Great. Yeah. So we do like to start that work early. And so as soon as ballots go out to the majority of voters on October 15th, the following Monday, we will be making sure that we're processing ballots. One, so that we can get that information into the system that your ballot has been received, so you can have confidence that it's in our hands. And two, so we can get as many ballots prepared for that election night result. So we will be doing that for two weeks leading up to the election night. And again, the more people that can get their ballots back early, the larger those results will be on election night itself.
Thank you. And then the last question I have right now, unless we get any more that come in, could you talk a bit about ballot processing? How long do you anticipate it will take to count and report results?
That's a good question. So we talked a little bit about how soon we start, and that we don't actually release results until 8 o'clock election night. But then we will continue to count ballots until we hit what's called the certification day. And so in the general election, that's 21 days after the election. And that's when election results are finalized by the county canvassing board here. And I would anticipate the majority of ballots will be counted about a week out from the election. Really, again, depending on how fast we get ballots returned from voters. But it'll take us probably through the weekend of election week to get the majority of those ballots counted. And then we'll continue to get ballots trickling in from voters that are either out of the country, or military voters that their ballots are taking a little bit longer to get to us just because of the mail transit times, and from voters that are carrying signature issues. So just because election day has happened, if you do have a signature issue where your signature doesn't match, or your signature wasn't on your outside envelope, you can get those cured all the way up until the day before we certify. So that 20th day after the election, and we'll make sure that we get your ballot counted.
Excellent. Thank you, Garth. One over here says, with so much question on the reliability from the USPS, is it better to drop off at the ballot box?
You know, that's I'm confident in our relationship with the post office. And I know there's been a lot of conversation nationally about concerns with working with the post office, and in some jurisdictions where vote by mail is new, and the local post office and the local jurisdiction that's in charge of elections don't have a long-standing relationship. I think you know, that is a challenge they have to work through this election if they're going to see an increase in vote by mail. But here in Washington State, with our long history and the fact that we're working closely with the post office to track a ballot delivery and ballot return, and we have a daily conversation, a daily phone call with the post office to just talk through issues and to make sure we're all seeing good mail flow through the system. That I think really it's a voter choice here in Washington State and in Snohomish County. Whichever you prefer, fine. Whichever you prefer, I certainly trust. And I have returned my ballot in multiple ways and through multiple locations. Part of that is because of the election nerd in me and wanting to see how long does it take my ballot to get back through from index versus from Everett. And but I think either way of returning your ballot is certainly safe and secure.
Excellent. Thank you, Garth. So next up, for people who do not have easy transportation access or do not choose to be out in public much due to COVID-19, can they leave their completed ballots in their mailbox for their postal carrier to take back to the post office? And can they feel comfortable and assured their ballot will be returned to the elections office and be counted?
That's a good question, and I think that again is an individual decision. It really depends on your mail box and what you've seen there. I feel comfortable in my neighborhood putting my ballot in the mailbox and putting the red flag up, but I think that's going to vary neighborhood to neighborhood, and so I think really choosing the method that feels best to you, and then following up with that tracking tool that we had to make sure that your ballot has been received is another great method. If you see that it hasn't been received in a reasonable time, usually 3 to 5 days after you've returned it through the mail, you can go ahead and contact our office, and we can help you resolve that issue either by reissuing you a ballot, so getting you another ballot, or through some other method. We do have replacement ballots that can also be downloaded from the internet as we get closer to election day. So, and I'll just provide a little more information about that, in the sense that when we do reissue a ballot to you, that first ballot has a flag that's put on it. So if it does come back, it's not accepted. And so we do have systems in place on a statewide database that ensures that only one ballot gets counted for any one voter.
All right. So given the reliance on computers to compile and tabulate ballots, what process is used to test and verify the accuracy of the results?
Great question. Yeah, so prior to each election, well, I guess I'll start even in further back. The equipment that we use is all federally tested and state tested and certified. So we can't just go ahead and make our own computer system and start counting ballots. We have to use an approved system here in Washington State. And the Secretary of State's office here in Washington is the group that reviews and approves voting equipment. And so we go through an acceptance testing process when we accept that equipment from the vendor. And then prior to each election, we do what we call logic and accuracy tests. Those are both a combination of internal testing, where we put a number of ballots down the system with different marking patterns to make sure the system's performing properly. Plus, we do a public test. So prior to each election, we will have a public test where people can come observe and watch that process. Whenever there is a federal or state issue on the ballot, the Secretary of State sends individuals to observe and monitor that testing process to make sure that the equipment's working properly. And then throughout the elections process, we're also monitoring our equipment and maintaining our equipment to make sure that it's properly reading the ballots. And then there are audit processes that occur after the election as well to just confirm that the equipment has functioned properly. So a number of different ways that we are testing and rechecking the equipment throughout the election to ensure that we're getting accurate counts.
Great, thank you. And the last question I have in the queue right now is, can the public view the counting process?
Yes, so all of our processes are open. All of our counting processes and ballot collection processes, that's all open for public observation. We do have, in fact, an observer training that's coming up here in a little later in October that I'd encourage you to go out on our website and look at. You can sign up for that, and we'll talk about some of those observer opportunities. I will point out that during COVID right now, if you do want to come observe, you certainly can do that, but we're going to make sure that you wear a mask. So you're going to have a mask that you put on, and that you also will have to go, depending on where you're at, you may have to go through a very simple health screening process to make sure that you aren't exhibiting COVID symptoms. It may include a temperature check, a no-touch temperature check, and then we're going to ask that you maintain social distance while you're in the facility. So we really do want to protect you as an observer, and then we certainly need to protect our workers as well to make sure that we can count and certify these election results on time.
Garth, you're going to have a lot of people who want a face covering like you have now.
Isn't that nice? Yeah, you can go to Edmunds and walk in Edmunds, and there's a store that has face coverings. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, and but that's where we found that one.
That's great. Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in at the moment. I'll give folks kind of just, I guess, a last warning here and say, I think if there's no other questions in the chat, we'll wrap this up for today. Again, I think we'll be able to pull together the slide deck and share those out via email. Look for the recording online if you want to share this to friends or family members that were not able to join us live today. I hope the Zoom format worked for everyone. We are going to be doing that observer training over Zoom again. So I think that that this is working pretty well on our end. So I thank you all for joining us. I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in, just a couple of thank yous here. So you're welcome. Thank you all very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.